Jarvis was designed to support many different types of roles within the DSO, as well as team members at many different levels throughout the organization. I'm going to be walking through how I would operationalize Jarvis in these various roles and the must-have modules and reports to lean on. I would utilize the dashboard on a very routine basis. In fact, it would probably be the first report I would pull up each day. You can use the presets to go ahead and take a look at how we performed yesterday, which would be something I would incorporate into my daily habits. I would also make sure that I'm pulling in all locations so that I can get a good understanding of how the enterprise performed yesterday compared to prior year, as well as to my budget or my goal that I've entered in Jarvis. So it's easy to see from this data that yesterday, my entire enterprise was up by $8,000 compared to the same day prior year. I can also go ahead and use my drop down to see how we compared to goal. We actually missed our goal yesterday. I had a goal that was $34,000 higher than what we actually achieved in net production. So I know within minutes that I'm doing better than prior year, but I'm a little off track for my goal when I just isolate yesterday's performance. Now let's take a look at how we're doing month to date. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my data for the entire month for my entire enterprise. So it's easy for me to see just by changing that one item that my entire enterprise for the month is down about $213,000 compared to our goal. So I know I'm behind plan. I can quickly again shift and see how we're doing compared to prior year. I'm excited because obviously we're growing this number by $201,000 when I think of my net production. You can do the same for any of these other metrics. So for example, I can see that we've increased our new patient count by 74 for the entire month of April when we look at last year. I can also see that my existing patient visits are up by 1,000. So right off the bat, I know my enterprise is looking healthy when I think about comparing to prior year, but I am slightly behind budget. Now, from an executive standpoint, this is a great report to use. It's also great for your regionals because you have these adjustable filters where maybe you want them to see how the entire organization is doing. However, you also want to keep them focused on just their locations. So it's very easy to use that filter and adjust down to a specific subset of practices that they can also use to compare to their own goals, their own budget, and their own prior year statistics. I would also be able to see as a regional manager or maybe an operator down here in a graphical format how each of my locations is doing. This visual just makes it really easy to see from a net production standpoint which practices are performing and maybe that I need to spend a little bit more time with Auburn. They're tracking to do less than 100,000 right now. So I really want to make sure that I devote some attention there to bump them up closer to my other two locations that are doing closer to 200,000. There's a few more visuals on this page that are fantastic for the enterprise level leader or the regional manager. I can check out my new patients compared to prior year as well as my total patient visits. And then further down on the page, I'm always going to know my top performing locations. Now this is going to show you your top 5 if you're supporting that number of practices. Let's go ahead and bring back all locations here. Quickly update that information and I can see my top 5 locations throughout the organization. This is great for being able to quickly see who I might want to give a kudos to, who I might want to recognize publicly across the group for performing both better than prior year and also being in the top 5 when it comes to net production so far this month. Now you can do the same with the graph on the right. This is going to show me my top providers in the group. So I've pulled in all locations. Again, here you have the ability to look at just one location if you'd like to isolate it. But I love to pull in all locations here and really get a good understanding of who my top performing providers are. The next daily go-to report that I would have for an executive or a high-level operator would be the snapshot report. One of the beautiful things about this particular report is that it's configurable. So you get to choose from over 100 metrics what goes on this report. So you can make it as comprehensive or as focused as you'd like for it to be. The reason I would really incorporate this into my daily and weekly habit is a couple of reasons. Number one, it can keep you focused on what KPIs and metrics are most important to you. It includes the color coding system here. So for any of these metrics, I know what locations are in the top 20% for my organization or the bottom. It's also sortable, so it's easy for me to just pull up to the top my top performing location when it comes to something like general production. I can also really lean into this over and under column. So it automatically calculates for me how far over or behind the budget or goals each of my locations is. I love this because I'm really able to identify who's ahead of the game for the month or who's behind. So for example, I've got 9 locations that are behind when it comes to achieving their goal for the month so far. As I scroll to the right, you can see a lot more information here. So we know how someone stands when it comes to production versus goal, percentage calculation. There's just a lot to work with here that can really keep your operators and your higher level executives on track. And again, you could only pull in those KPIs that you really want them to hone in on and focus on. We're getting into more of the why here. So we've looked at our dashboard to kind of understand which locations need support. And then we're using the snapshot to really dig further into the details and understand who is trending above or below goal. The operations module has over 12 different views, and it's mostly tabled. What's so great about this module is that it allows you to then understand the strengths and the opportunities within each of your locations and really dive into the details so that you spend time focusing on the right opportunities for each location. So many times DSOs and practices are making assumptions about what areas of the business need focus. Operations really helps you validate that, really arrive at the best conclusion for what areas are going to bring the biggest impact to your business. Because it allows you to compare everything from the types of procedures that are happening in each of your locations so that you can immediately rule out, perhaps it's a specific procedure that's just not taking place in the practice. You can tell by looking at this location, and again, here we have the flexibility to change the date ranges, that our top procedures are all pretty much preventative or diagnostic in nature. We have a lot of x-rays going on, which is great, but I'm not really seeing any major restorative procedures happening in my top 10 services. So that might be an area of opportunity for this location. We can really use the bottom half of the report to sort and filter to any code. We could even say, I want to just know how many actual crowns are taking place in the practice. You can use this search bar to filter down to a specific code. By provider now, I know how many 2740s are taking place in that date range. We actually have a pretty good count here. One provider has completed over 41 and one provider is sitting at 23. I can even see the total dollars that are associated with that type of procedure. So it's just one more piece of information that helps me understand what this practice's opportunities and strengths really are. The trends view is fantastic because it's a huge time saver. You don't have to run 12 different reports for 12 different locations to get a 12-month history on pretty much any metric. Using trends allows you to pick a metric. Here, let's just go ahead and pull in our new patient visits by office and update our information. If you really want to understand, practices that may be struggling, is it related to new patients? Sometimes you might have a provider who's really convinced that their drop in production is related to new patients. This helps you very quickly validate that, and not just validate it for that current month, but over the last trailing 12 months so that you can greater back that into any declines or increases in production. I've moved on to my provider view here in the operations module. Again, great report not only for operators, but for executives or clinical leaders and even regional managers that want to be able to compare their providers across locations. It's very common for providers to go to multiple locations or serve multiple lines of business. And this really allows you to compare them in a manner that not only looks at the total in this first column, but we divide it out by working day, by patient visit, and even by procedure, because it's very common to have providers that are, perhaps working part-time versus full-time and so on. I'm going to move on over to marketing. This gives us a really good understanding of where our patients are stemming from, what our top referral sources are in the practice, who our top insurance payers are, how many of our patients are coming in that are cash. Just gives you a really good understanding of the production related to new patients and not only their payer mix, but how they were referred into your various practices. Operationally, I would use this module at least once a week to really, compare those locations, compare providers, and really dig into the why behind a lagging metric, which would be more just your basic production and collections. This can really tell the story about what's happening in the practice because we're able to compare so many different types of views here. Now we can come over to the KPIs. This is really where the diagnosis of the practice happens. We've used our other reports to lead us directionally into which locations are performing, which ones are growing or achieving plan. Now we can really use the KPIs to, again, assess the practice at a deeper level. So I would probably say your field operations, your operators that have a very close touch to the practice, and your clinical leaders would really leverage these customizable KPIs to effectuate change in the practice. And it's really where we're able to better understand clinically what's happening with the patients by leaning into these KPIs. These KPIs are divided into hygiene, doctor, office administrative KPIs, and even a full host of specialty KPIs that are really catered to the types of procedures that a specialist may be performing. You can compare one location at a time, or we can switch over and compare really our choice of locations and apply that filter that way. That's going to pull us back into our tabled view, which again presents to us our top 20% and bottom 20% in a color-coded fashion. And if I have some questions about, why hygiene in my location may not be performing, this is a great type of report to use. We can take this fluoride location, for example, and I can see they're really struggling with periodoprophy percentage. So I can expect a lower production per day, which again, here we're only averaging $306 per day per provider. A big piece of that is probably related to my periodoprophy, but I can also see they're not really doing a lot of adjunctives. Very little FMXs are happening, very few varnishes are happening. We also have a low patient count per day at only 4.7. So hitting this practice with a plan and collaborating with them on a plan around driving the number of patient visits up per day. Maybe it's a reactivation campaign. Maybe it's just a very concentrated effort on confirmations if we have a high no-show rate here. But I really want to focus on driving that visit count up, and at the same time partnering with my clinical leaders around, is there an opportunity to improve that periodoprophy and maybe the number of adjunctives that we're doing, including x-rays each day for patients. You can see sealants are low. So just a lot of opportunities presented to me in red really makes it easy for me to focus on the right opportunities. What's also great about working with the KPI module is that you're able to customize the definitions for each of these. So if I hover over this little information icon, I can see the definition in place for this metric. Makes it very intuitive and easy for even your providers at the practice level to use to monitor their own standard of care and their own metrics. You can also click on the breakdown and it's going to give you the exact breakdown of that metric. So here I can see, my count of fluoride each day that provider worked and how we arrived at the number of fluoride applications per day. Now we're going to look at a few reports that the finance team, the accounting team is absolutely going to love. They're probably spending a good amount of time trying to arrive at a true collections efficiency. We all know that collections are trailing in a dental practice. Often and most likely what you're collecting this month was produced in another month. The waterfall report is excellent for helping you match back the payment or the collections of a procedure to the specific month the net production occurred. So we have 24 months of history here going down the left. We can see the net production that was performed for that month in the first row. And then working our way over, we can see the amount that was collected in each month that is related to that production. So if we scoot on over, let's look at a more recent month. So I'm going to focus on April here of 2021. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see that within that same month, we have collected $64,000 that's related to this $113,000 that we produced in April. So we're off to a pretty good start. So far, we've collected 56% of the production that we've charged out. We expect that as we get into next month and even the month after, we're going to see this number increase. You can see in our historical months, we're averaging a much higher rate. If we average everything together, we're collecting 97% of what's charged out. So this is just a great way to take some of the manual work that's probably happening with arriving at that collections percentage and really land at a much more true allocation of collections compared to production. This is also great because you can identify any unapplied payments that might be occurring. If we come down here and just click on the month, we get all the details. So we can see our patient, the date that the payment was posted, the actual procedure date. So you can tell just by looking at this that we had a few weeks go by. The procedure was done on the 25th of March. The payment was posted on April 9th. I can see what the procedures were, and I can see it was applied correctly to the account. But I also have payments that might be in my system that are not connected to a procedure by error, especially if you're, sourcing out any of your payment posting. This is a fantastic report to use to identify some of those unapplied payments and take action. CFOs love our aging report as well as accounting teams, because it's one of the only places that you're going to be able to capture a historical aging and really understand how your aging by aging bucket is changing over time. So for example, we're looking at a by office representation here. You can also break it down for each location by patient or responsible party or even insurance payer. But this gives you a good idea of all your locations on one page, how the current aging as well as any aged accounts are sitting based on the age of that balance. One of the things that we do at Jarvis to make this an even more valuable report is allow you the flexibility to include or exclude your credits. Being able to identify who those credits belong to and take action there or exclude them from your aging calculation is a feature that most really love, that they're typically spending a lot of time doing manually. What I also love about this is we could go back in time. Because we're snapshotting this every night, I can go back to the 21st of April and see how my aging may have changed when I want to look at these totals and see if it's growing or declining. So just overall a fabulous report that takes the work out of running these reports often and frequently and saving them. Regional managers absolutely love the ability to see their schedule from anywhere on any device. So instead of logging into multiple systems, it's so easy for them to switch between locations, check out what's on the schedule for the day, or even check out the schedule for the month. We're going to update this production number for you as the day goes by so that we've got a real-time reflection of production. If I want to look at this from a monthly basis, I can see what my scheduled dollars were compared to goal. I can check out my patient appointments and see where my opportunities are for this practice to maybe schedule a little bit differently or in a more productive fashion. I can also isolate a particular week. So for example, if I want to take a look at this last week of the month, I can go ahead and highlight all these days, and up at the top, it's going to give me a total scheduled dollar value for the selected range. This is also great for doctors or any managers that may be taking after hours calls, or if there's any reason that the practice may need to make adjustments to the schedule the night before, you have that information at your fingertips, really creating a cloud-like experience for even a server-based practice management system. We've spent some time talking about how you use Jarvis to analyze your data and create plans of action to impact the practice's performance. But now we're going to get into how you use Jarvis to actually add production to your schedule. And one of my favorite ways to do that is through the front office module. This was built with front office team members for front office team members with their direct influence. So not only are they able to track themselves to their monthly goal, so they know at all times how they're forecasting to end the month. The most beautiful part of this module is that we're going to serve up the right schedule opportunities to them to drive their schedule forward. This particular practice, out of 149 broken appointments so far in the month of April, they've only rescheduled 46 of those. So they need to focus on these 103 that are not yet back on the schedule. And it's easy to do because we give them all the data right here on the bottom of the screen in a workable format. Not only are we going to rank these in order of value of the appointment so that we make sure and really focus. If you can see, this one is unscheduled. It's a $1,400 appointment. I can click on the patient detail, understand what this broken visit was for. I know exactly what they need to come in for. I can even look at the treatment plan. I can use this information to contact the patient directly, or I can add a reminder for myself or another team member to contact this patient at a later date, and Jarvis will remind you from the front office portal to contact that patient. We have 3 other opportunities here, including patients that have left the practice without a future hygiene visit that we need to schedule. I can see patients due for recall based on how overdue they are. I can also see patients with unscheduled treatment and ensure that we're following up in that manner as well. Here's really where Jarvis gets into impacting your actual production, and it's all in an easy to view and easy to digest format for the front office team member. There are multiple reports for that practice level team member that really wants to drive production. We already know that our front office module can give us unscheduled treatment opportunities, but the treatment miner is really a gold mine of unscheduled treatment that also shows them how they're doing at closing treatment. So we're going to calculate a percent closed by taking the total dollars presented and comparing that to the amount of active production, how much of that treatment plan was actually completed that month. This practice is only achieving 17% so far in April, leaving a lot of pending unscheduled dollars on the table. We make it easy for them to resurface that, identify that pending unscheduled treatment, research the patient, create another one of those reminders, which can also be an automated process, or even narrow this list down by procedure code. Let's take a peek at the different treatment plans with crowns on them. You can filter your list here to include all sorts of different codes just based on your practice, and that's going to give you with a much more targeted list of patients to contact. The last report that I'll focus on for that practice level user is the morning huddle. This is another way that they can start their day off using their data in a way that's much more efficient than they might be doing right now. If they're coming in the morning and they're pulling different data together, even if you've given them an agenda that you want them to use, chances are they're deviating from that if they're taking the time to huddle at all. So the huddle makes it easy for them to do the right thing, meet with the team in the morning, and really form a plan for how they're going to approach the day. This is another report that's configurable. You get to choose what goes on it, and it really helps set the tone. We can even automate this so that without even logging into Jarvis, they're going to get a report delivered straight to their inbox every day that encourages them to focus on the right things, including options like patients with unscheduled treatment plans, patients with unscheduled family members, even patients that need to be scheduled for hygiene. This takes the legwork out of your huddle, just ensuring that the right discussion points are had in the morning. We can even touch on how we did yesterday. We left $15,000 on the table yesterday. We can make a plan of how we're going to reapproach these patients and get them back on the books. If you don't want to automate this report, you don't have to. You can have it as an accountability item for your team and have them send it out as an email to you every day. So as you can see, Jarvis benefits many different types of team members within your dental support organization at their various levels, and it's really based around what's important to them. Jarvis was designed with each of these team members' feedback in play. This is really how I would kind of tackle a day with Jarvis, even a week with Jarvis, as we think about metrics that we may want to look at daily versus weekly or monthly. Really easy to implement into your organization once you understand what's important to you and all the flexibility that you have with Jarvis.